Okay, so this is Tractate Shevuot, Daf 37, Amud Aleph. So here we go. I need to back up to the end of 36 because we just got into the Gemara, and it says Rav Acha bar Huna and Rav Shemuel, son of Rav Yehuda, studied Tractate Shevuot, meaning the Mishnah of Tractate Shevuot, in the study hall of Rabbah. Rav Kahana encountered them and inquired with regard to a matter in the Mishnah, and he said to them, if one intentionally took a false oath on a deposit and witnesses forewarned him, what is the halacha? Is it the case that since the halacha of an oath on a deposit is novelty, as in the entire Torah, we do not find another case where one who transgressed intentionally brings an offering for an atonement? But here he does bring an offering for transgressing the prohibition intentionally. There's no difference whether the witnesses forewarned him, and there's no difference whether they did not forewarn him. And he is, and he is liable to bring a guilt offering, though generally there is no offering brought when there was forewarning, and that's a question, a long one. Or perhaps that matter of bringing a guilt offering when one intentionally takes an oath, false oath, applies only when they did not forewarn him, but when they forewarned him, he is flogged, as this is the standard punishment for an intentional transgression, and he does not bring an offering. Or perhaps we impose both lashes and a guilt offering. Okay, so they said to Rav Kahana, we learn in a Braita, the halachot of an oath on a deposit are more stringent than the halachot of an oath of testimony, as one is liable to receive lashes for intentionally taking a false oath on a deposit. And for unwittingly taking a false oath on a deposit, one is liable to bring a guilt offering worth at least 2 silver shekels, whereas one who takes a false oath of testimony, whether intentionally or unwittingly, brings a sin offering. From the fact that the Braita states that for intentionally taking a false oath on a deposit, one is liable to receive lashes by inference, it can be understood that the Braita is referring to a case where witnesses forewarned him, as one cannot receive lashes without forewarning, and it is stating, yes, he is liable to receive lashes, but he is not liable to bring an offering. The Braita then resolves the question of Rav Kahana. The Gemara elaborates, and what is the stringency in the fact that one who intentionally takes a false oath on a deposit receives lashes? It is due to the fact that a person prefers to bring an offering rather than receive lashes. So Rabbah bar Itai said to the students of Rabbah, you cannot answer the question from that Braita, as who is the Tana who taught that intentionally taking a false oath on a deposit is not subject to atonement? It is Rabbi Shimon. But according to the rabbis, meaning the majority, he is liable to bring a guilt offering as well as receiving lashes. Therefore, the question remains unresolved or unanswered. So Rav Kahana said to the students, apart from this, you cannot answer my question from this Braita, as I am the one who teaches this Braita, and this is how I teach it. An oath on a deposit is more stringent than an oath of testimony, since for taking a false oath on a deposit, either intentionally or unwittingly, one is liable to bring a guilt offering worth at least 2 silver shekels. And what is the stringency in this halacha? It is that there, with regard to an oath of testimony, he's liable to bring a sin offering that can be worth even 1/6 of 1 dinar. And here the guilt offering incurred for an oath on a deposit must be worth at least 2 silver shekels. Let's see. The Gemara suggests, and let him derive an answer to his question from this version of the Braita, which indicates that one who intentionally takes a false oath on a deposit brings an offering and does not receive lashes. The Gemara responds, perhaps it is referring to a case where they did not forewarn him. Had he been forewarned, he would be flogged. So the Gemara presents a different version of the previous discussion. Tashema, come in here. In answer to the question of Rav Kahana from the Mishnah, one is not liable for taking a false oath on a deposit unwittingly. And what is he liable for when he intentionally takes a false oath? A guilt offering worth at least 2 silver shekels. The Gemara explains, what is it not that the Mishnah is referring to a case where the witnesses forewarned him? And the Mishnah nevertheless rules only that he must bring an offering. The Gemara rejects the proof. Here too, the Mishnah is referring to a case where the witnesses did not forewarn him. The Gemara continues to seek an answer to Rav Kahana's question. Tashema, lo, no. So come in here, an answer from the Braita. After comparing the case of a Nazirite to one who takes an oath on a deposit, the Braita states, lo, no. If you said that the the halacha that Braita discusses is true with regard to an impure Nazarite who is indeed flogged for intentionally becoming impure, shall you also say that this is the case with regard to one who took an oath on a deposit who is not flogged? The Gemara notes, now, from the fact that the Braita states that the Nazarite is flogged by inference, it can be understood that the Braita is referring to a case where the witnesses forewarned him, as one is not liable to receive lashes without forewarning. And yet the Braita states, shall you say that this is the case with regard to one who took an oath on a deposit who was not flogged? One can infer, but he does bring a guilt offering. Okay, the Gemara rejects the proof. What does the Braita mean when it states he is not flogged? It means that he is not exempted through lashes alone, and he must also bring an offering. The Gemara asks, by inference, does this mean that an impure Nazarite is exempted through lashes alone? Isn't it written in the Torah explicitly with regard to him that there is a requirement to bring an offering? The Gemara responds, the offering brought by an impure Nazarite does not serve as an atonement. Rather, there the Nazarite brings an offering in order to purify himself so that his Nazariteship, or Nezirut, I guess you should say, could go into effect while he is in a state of purity. The offering must be brought even if the Nazarite became impure unwittingly. And the Nazarite is someone who takes a vow, basically that they're abstaining from grape products, whether it be wine or grape juice or grapes or raisins or something like that, and basically from cutting their hair. So they wouldn't cut their hair, whether it would be their beard, their eyelashes, eyebrows, like any hair, it would just grow. So anyway, the sages said this matter before Rabbah. They related the question of Rav Kahana as to whether one who intentionally takes a false oath and was forewarned by witnesses is liable to bring an offering. So Rabbah said to them, may one conclude by inference that in a case when they did not warn him, but there are witnesses to the fact that the defendant owes money to the claimant, he is liable to bring an offering. Isn't this case merely a verbal denial that does not have any effect with regard to liability to pay? Since there are witnesses who will testify that the defendant owes the claimant, his denial and false oath did not exempt him from payment, and he therefore should not be liable to bring a guilt offering for taking a false oath. The Gemara infers, evidently, Rabbah holds that one who denies a monetary claim to which there are witnesses is exempt from bringing a false offering for taking a false oath, since the witnesses will testify to the validity of the claimant's claim, and the denial of the defendant is of no consequence. Okay. Rav Hanina said to Rabbah, a Baraita is taught that supports your opinion. The verse states with regard to an oath denying a monetary claim, quote, and deal falsely therein, Leviticus 5:22, which serves to exclude one who admits to the truth of the claim of one of a group of brothers or to one of a group of partners. Even if he denies the claim to the rest of the brothers or the partners, the same verse also states, quote, and swear to a lie, which serves to exclude one who borrows money with a promissory note or one who borrows money in the presence of witnesses. Evidently, one is not liable for taking a false oath concerning monetary claim when there are witnesses who can testify. And it just, all the time, studying the Talmud, it just impresses on you how exact the language is. The language of the Torah, every verse. Like, we've been going over these same verses for, nearly this entire tractate, and it's just amazing how it goes back and forth over just little tiny details in the text. Okay. So Rabbah said to him, if your proof is because of that Baraita, you have not supported us. Since that Baraita is referring to a case where the defendant says, I borrowed, but I did not borrow in the presence of witnesses. Or he says, I borrowed, but I did not borrow with a promissory note. Since his denial is only with regard to the circumstances of the loan and not to the actual debt, he is exempt from liability for taking the false oath. Rabbah elaborates, from where in the Baraita is this explanation apparent? From the fact that it teaches that the verse, quote, and deal falsely therein, serves to exclude one who admits to one of the brothers or to one of the partners. What are the circumstances of that case where one admitted to one of the brothers? If we say that he admitted only the portion of the debt owed to that brother, then why is he exempt? Isn't there the denial of the claim of the other brother, which is a denial of a monetary claim? Rather, is it not that the brother said to him, "You borrowed from both of us"? And he said to them, "No, I borrowed all of the amount in question from only one of you," which is merely a verbal denial. As he admits that he owes the claimed amount and disputes only the circumstances of the debt. So, in sense, the first clause of the Braita is referring to a case of a verbal denial. The last clause is also referring to a verbal denial. Consequently, one cannot cite a proof of this Braita, or from this Braita. Simanim. Let's see. The Gemara attempts to prove that one who takes a false oath on a deposit is liable to bring an offering even when there are witnesses, and they present a mnemonic or a siman to remember the series of proofs. So the siman is liability sets of the homeowner, stringent and Nazirite. So the Gemara suggests, come in here, Tashema, a proof from the Mishnah. He is not liable for unwittingly taking a false oath by himself. And what is he liable for when he intentionally takes a false oath? He must bring a guilt offering worth at least 2 silver shekels. And the Gemara continues, what is it not referring to a case where he intentionally denies the claim of witnesses? And I want to point out, the Gemara specifically says silver shekels and not 2 silver shekels, and the editor puts this order in here. It's because it's plural. So because it's plural, it means at least 2, right? So, but anyway, no, the Mishnah is referring to a case where there are no witnesses and he admits on his own that he intentionally took a false oath. So had there been witnesses, he would have been exempt from bringing an offering. The Gemara suggests, Tashema, come and hear a proof from a Mishnah. This would have been from 31b. And it discusses an oath of testimony. If there were 2 sets of witnesses who took an oath of testimony, and the first set falsely denied knowledge of the matter, and then the second set falsely denied knowledge of the matter, both are liable because the testimony can exist with either of them. The Gemara clarifies, granted, the second set should be liable since the first set already denied knowledge of the incident, and the validity of the claimant's monetary claim now depends upon their testimony. But why is the first set liable? Doesn't this, we're now in Amud Beit, so the second folio, or second side of the page, doesn't the second set stand ready to testify so that the refusal of the first set of witnesses does not affect a monetary claim? Evidently, a denial of a monetary claim to which there are witnesses is still considered a denial. So Ravina said, here we are dealing with a case where the time of the denial by the first set, the second set of witnesses, were related to one another through their wives, so that the second set was unfit to provide testimony and their wives were moribund. Lest you say, most moribund people actually die soon thereafter, and the witnesses are considered fit to provide testimony. The Braita teaches us that in any event, they are currently alive and have not died. The second set was therefore unfit to provide testimony. Tashema, so the Gemara suggests, come and hear a proof from a Braita. In the case of a homeowner acting as a bailee who falsely claimed that a thief stole a deposit from him, and the homeowner took an oath to that effect and then admitted that he was lying, and witnesses came and testified that the item was not stolen from the homeowner, the halakha depends on the circumstances. If he admitted to his lie before the witnesses came and testified, he pays the principal value of the item and the additional 1/5 payment for denying that he possessed the deposit, and he brings a guilt offering as atonement for a false oath on a deposit. If he admitted his guilt after the witnesses came and testified, he pays the double payment and brings a guilt offering. The Braita indicates that even in the case of a monetary claim to which there are witnesses, one is liable to bring a guilt offering. The Gemara responds here to explain this Braita as Ravina explained the previous Braita, that at the time the homeowner took his oath, the witnesses were related through their moribund wives and were unfit to provide testimony. Okay, they were unfit to provide testimony. So I had to look up the word moribund, moribund, and it's someone who's about ready to die. So the Gemara suggests, come in here, Tashema, a proof from a Braita. In the case of a homeowner acting as a bailee who falsely claimed that a thief stole a deposit from him, and the homeowner took an oath to that effect, and then admitted that he was lying, and witnesses came and testified that the item was not stolen from the homeowner, the halakha depends on the circumstances. If he admitted to his lie before the witnesses came and testified, he pays the principal value of the item and the additional 1/5 payment for denying that he possessed the deposit. And he brings a guilt offering as atonement for a false oath on a deposit. If he admitted his guilt after the witnesses came and testified, he pays the double payment and brings a guilt offering. The Baraita indicates that even in the case of monetary claim to which there are witnesses, one is liable to bring a guilt offering. The Gemara responds here to explain this Baraita as Ravina explained the previous Baraita, that at the time the homeowner took his oath, the witnesses were related through their moribund wives and were unfit to provide testimony. So Ravina said to Rav Ashi, Tashma, come and hear another proof from that which is taught in Baraita. The halachot of an oath on a deposit are more stringent than the halachot of an oath on a testimony, as one is liable to receive lashes for intentionally taking a false oath on a deposit. One is liable to bring a guilt offering worth at least 2 silver shekels for taking an oath unwittingly. Ravina infers from the fact that the Baraita states that one is flogged. By inference, it can be understood that the Baraita is referring to a case where there are witnesses to the fact that the deposit is in the defendant's possession and the defendant was forewarned. And yet it states, one is liable to bring a guilt offering worth at least 2 silver shekels for taking the oath unwittingly. So Rav Mordechai said to them, apart from this, you cannot cite this Baraita as a proof. As didn't Rav Kahana already say to the students in 37a, I am the one who teaches this Baraita, and this is how I teach it. An oath on a deposit is more stringent than an oath of testimony, since for taking a false oath on a deposit, either intentionally or unwittingly, one is liable to bring a guilt offering worth at least 2 silver shekels. The Baraita is not referring to a case in which there were witnesses who forewarned him. Okay, so the Gemara suggests, Tashama, come and hear a proof from another Baraita. No, if you said that the halacha that the halacha that Baraita discusses is true with regard to an impure Nazirite who is indeed flogged for intentionally becoming impure, shall you also say that this is the case with regard to one who took an oath on a deposit who was not flogged? The Gemara elaborates, what are the circumstances of the Baraita? If it is a case where there were no witnesses, why is the Nazirite flogged? Rather, isn't it obvious that there are witnesses, and yet the Baraita teaches, shall you also say that this is the case with regard to one who took an oath on a deposit, who is not flogged? It may be inferred that he does not receive lashes, but does bring an offering, even though there are witnesses. The Gemara concludes the refutation of the opinion of Rabbah is indeed a conclusive refutation. So Rabbi Yochanan says, one who denies a monetary claim to which there are witnesses is liable to bring a guilt offering for a false oath on a deposit, but if he denies a debt concerning which there is a promissory note, he is exempt. So Rav Papa said, what is the reasoning of Rabbi Yochanan? It occurs that witnesses die, and it is therefore possible that he would not be found liable through their testimony. He is therefore considered to have denied a monetary claim. By contrast, a promissory note remains in its place, and his denial would never have exempted him from payment. Rav Huna, son of Rav Yehoshua, said to Rav Papa, this cannot be the reasoning of Rabbi Yochanan, as it also occurs that a promissory note becomes lost. Rather, Rav Huna, son of Rav Yehoshua, said, this is the reasoning of Rabbi Yochanan. It is because a promissory note comprises a lien on land, since the promissory note places a lien on the debtor's property, and one does not bring an offering for an oath on a deposit for denying a lien on land. So since one does not take an oath concerning land. So it was stated in a case where one administers an oath to witnesses who deny knowing information with regard to ownership of land, and they deny knowledge of the matter. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar disagree. One says that the witnesses are liable to bring a sin offering for a false oath of testimony, and one says that they are exempt. The Gemara notes, it may be concluded that it is Rabbi Yochanan who says they are exempt. This can be inferred from the fact that Rabbi Yochanan says one who denies monetary claim to which there are witnesses is liable. One who denies a claim concerning which there is a promissory note is exempt. And this conclusion is in accordance with the explanation of Rav Huna, son of Rav Yehoshua, that the reasoning of Rabbi Yochanan is that a promissory note comprises a lien on land, and one does not bring an offering for denying a lien on land. The Gemara affirms, indeed, it may be concluded. So Rabbi Yirmiyah said to Rabbi Abahu, shall we say that Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar disagree with regard to the issue that is the subject of the dispute of Rabbi Eliezer and the rabbis, meaning the majority? So, as we learned in a Braita, in a case of one who robbed another of a field and then a river flooded it, he is liable to provide the field's owner with a different field, since the value of the flooded field was significantly decreased, and the robber must return the value of that which he stole. This is the statement of Rabbi Eliezer. And the rabbis say, he is exempt from doing so, as he can say to the owner, that which is yours is before you. The robber may return the flooded field to its owner without reimbursing him for the loss of its value, since according to the rabbis, land cannot be stolen. Consequently, the field is considered to be in the possession of its owner, and the thief is not obligated in the mitzvah of returning a stolen item. Rabbi Yirmiyah continues, and we say with regard to what do they disagree? Rabbi Eliezer interprets the verses that discuss an oath on a deposit in the mitzvah to return stolen items according to the hermeneutical principle of amplifications and restrictions. And the rabbis interpret them according to the hermeneutical principle of generalizations and details. He explains, Rabbi Eliezer interprets the verses, if anyone sins and commit a transgress against the Lord and deal falsely with his neighbor, any matter of deposit or of pledge, or of robbery, or have oppressed his neighbor, or anything about which he has sworn falsely, he shall return it in full. Leviticus 5:21-24. According to the hermeneutical principle of amplifications and restrictions, the phrase, if anyone sin and commit a trespass against the Lord and deal falsely with his neighbor, amplified the halacha. When the verse states, in a matter of deposit or of pledge, it has restricted the halacha to the case of a deposit. When the verse then states, or of anything about which we have sworn falsely, he shall restore it in full. It has then amplified the halacha again. Accordingly, as the Torah amplified and then restricted and then amplified again, it has amplified the halacha to include everything except for the specific matter excluded by the restriction. What is included due to the fact that the verse has amplified the halacha to include everything that one steals. And what is excluded due to the fact that the verse restricted the halacha? It restricted the halacha to exclude financial documents, which are dissimilar to a deposit in that their value is not intrinsic, but rather due to their function. Consequently, according to Rabbi Eliezer, land that was stolen is included in the halachot stated in these verses, and one who steals land must reimburse the field's owner. And the rabbis interpreted these verses according to the hermeneutical principle of generalizations and details. The verse, and deal falsely with his neighbor, is a generalization, while the subsequent phrase, in a matter of deposit or of pledge or of robbery, is a detail. When the verse then states, or of anything about which he has sworn falsely, he shall restore it in full, it has, end of quote, it has then generalized again. In the case of a generalization and a detail in a generalization, you may deduce that the verse is referring only to items similar to the detail. So accordingly, just as the detail, that is the deposit, is explicitly a case of movable property and has intrinsic monetary value, so too the verse includes anything that is movable property and has intrinsic monetary value. Consequently, land has been excluded as it is not movable property. Slaves have been excluded as they are compared to land with regard to many areas of halacha. Financial documents have been excluded because although they are movable property, they do not have intrinsic monetary value. Rabbi Yirmiyah concludes, shall we say that one who deems the witnesses liable, in a case of an oath of testimony concerning land, Rabbi Elazar holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, that land is included in the mitzvah of returning stolen property and in the halachot of an oath on a deposit, and by extension in the halachot of an oath of testimony. And the one who deems them exempt, that is Rabbi Yochanan, holds in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis of the majority, that land is excluded from these halachot. Rabbi Abahu said to Rabbi Yirmiyah, "No, the two disagreements do not completely correspond. One who deems the witnesses liable must, in fact, hold in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. But one who deems them exempt could have said to you, in this case of an oath of testimony, even Rabbi Eliezer concedes that they are exempt from bringing an offering, as the Merciful One states, quote, of anything about which we have sworn falsely, end of quote. And not everything about which he has sworn falsely. The verse indicates that only certain items are included in the halachot of an oath of testimony. Therefore, land is excluded, since it is dissimilar to the specific instances mentioned in the verse. So Rav Papa said in the name of Rava, the Mishnah is also precisely formulated as it teaches, in a case where one accuses another, you stole my ox, and the defendant says, I did not steal your ox. If the claimant replied, I administer an oath to you, and the defendant said, Amen, he is liable. The Mishnah discusses a claim of a stolen ox, whereas it does not teach a claim of it does not teach a claim of you stole my slave. What is the reason? It is not due to the fact that a slave is compared to land, and one is not liable to bring an offering for denial in a matter of a lien on land. That's a question. Rav Papi said in the name of Rava, there is no proof from the Mishnah, as say the last clause in the Mishnah. This is the principle. For any claim that the defendant would have to pay based on his own admission, he is liable. And for any claim that he would not pay based on his own admission, but by the testimony of witnesses, he is exempt, even if he denies a claim against him and takes an oath to that effect. So Rav Papi asks, what is added by the phrase, this is the principle? Is it not to include even an accusation of you stole my slave in the halacha of oaths on a deposit? And that is the end of Daf 37. Thanks for watching.